All right, we're back here on Good Evening with Christine for When Monet Meets Debussy, the part of the show where we get to talk about art and explore different artists and some very interesting artwork. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty all right.
Me too. I'm kind of feeling the nice weather outside. It got a little warmer today, which is, this like a fine balance between end of summer, too cold for winter. Fall usually fits it, but sometimes it can be a little dramatic. But I think today was absolutely perfect.
Yeah, it's been a really nice fall so far. I'm really enjoying the weather.
And, I'm very excited to jump into the artists that we're going to talk about tonight. I'm getting a little preview, but why don't you share that with our listeners?
Okay, so tonight we're going to be talking about an artist who meshes his expertise in many different areas in textile, dance, and art to create something that's kind of difficult to categorize. So the series of works we will talk about, they sit between fashion, performance, sculpture, and also community engagement.
Ooh.
And they bring forth a sense of joyous celebration, both liberation and empowerment. So let me describe how one of the works are.
All right.
It's the day of the event, and everyone and their family have come out to the field behind the school to witness a spectacle. There are hundreds of people, many from the high school. There are cheerleaders, members of the marching band, the local dance troupe, and directed by one man getting ready, finding their place. There are also mothers, their younger children, neighbors, gathering around the group on the grass. Everyone settles down when a loud burst of joyous sound from the marching band breaks the silence. And out comes a procession of dancing figures in large, bright costumes. Some are covered from head to toe in long neon hair, others in beaded or sequined textile patterns, some with large feathers, buttons, even toys and knickknacks. The type of stuff you might find at the local flea market or dollar store. The patterns and construction of the suits are sophisticated and breathtaking. They're made of everyday kitschy material that are turned into a runway-worthy collection of suits. Now, these suits come in all types of fantastical structures and forms, but the feeling is the same. They're bright, vibrant, and dazzling to the eyes. The bodies wearing the suits bounce to the rhythm of the music, supported by the chanting of the cheerleaders, and the materials on their suit move to their bodies, creating percussive sounds. Hundreds of silver buttons on one suit glistening to the sunlight and clicking against each other. One tree-like figure is covered only in twigs and that become their own kind of instrument. They perform what can only be described as a ceremonial ritual involving hundreds of people in the town, transporting them to the school from the schoolyard to a place of dreamlike jubilance.
That was a wonderful description, but honestly, I'm a little lost at the kind of artwork this is. Is it a fashion? Is it something that we wear? Is it a kind of a moving art piece? Is it something that's more performance-based? It seems like there's a lot of categories that we haven't touched on yet, but that's why I'm so excited to talk about it.
Yeah, I know. It's really hard to categorize, these, so they're called Soundsuits, and it's a series of works that have been created by the African-American fabric sculptor, dancer, and performance artist Nick Cave.
Oh, so not the musician Nick Cave, but the famous artist.
Yeah.
And I had to say, this is something I've never heard of, really, a fabric sculptor. I mean, you can consider a lot of fashion designers fabric sculptors, but in this case, he really takes it to the next level.
He does, and he constructs these interesting forms out of what might have started from his interest in textile and different types of fashion. And I think I really like what you're saying about having a hard time understanding these things, because I think that's one of his goals. And I would almost consider them like a phenomenon. Like, he is creating a whole culture of movements and, colors and these like art-like objects and interactions that, they go between sculpture and fashion and performance. It's quite interesting. And yeah.
Well, I'm curious how many there are exactly. You said in your description that hundreds of, different kinds of, how many are out there?
Okay, so, there are over 500 these so-called Soundsuits today. And, they sometimes are displayed in the gallery as just static sculptures. And other times they're worn by Nick Cave himself for performances that he does. And like the case that we just described, they're also worn by a whole group of people sometimes. Usually they're amateur performers who bring these fantastical experiences to a community or any sort of non-traditional venue for art.
Wow, they really sound like something, almost a spectacle to see.
Yeah.
And are they around nowadays? Is this something that's currently happening? Or?
Yeah, there are some events, and, he had a big sort of event that he organized in Detroit and also at the subway stations in the train stations in New York. And, I think it's interesting because he is trying to bring art and create communities of art around these ideas. And, he brings it to a community level. So he's trying to get people involved and engaged in what he is doing. And even though a lot of these works are really colorful and vibrant and exciting, people call them joyous. The first Soundsuit that goes all the way back to 1992, it started from a very somber place.
How did it start?
Well, it was just the year before the incident happened that started the LA riots. There were 14 officers of the Los Angeles Police Department that were involved in this really tragic, violent beating of an African-American man named Rodney King. And it was big at the time, you probably remember. And he talks about experiencing a lot of personal trauma because of seeing these riots. He had these feelings of being devalued and dismissed as a person. And he connected with Rodney King as a black male. He says that he realized that could have easily been himself. And so one day at a park, Cave noticed a broken twig that was on the ground, and he started collecting them because he felt, a connection with this twig. And he soon had enough of these twigs to create a sculpture, and he created this body-like structure that he decided then to, try to wear. And when he put it on, he realized that it had acoustics to it. So he realized that, these pieces of overlooked twigs, when they come together and create this massive structure, they make sound.
I wonder what sound it actually makes. I mean, is it the brushing of a bunch of twigs, or is it something unique? Maybe something I've never heard before? I really am interested about what it would be like to, I guess, collect enough twigs to wear as a suit.
Yeah, I mean, it just sounds like, I don't know how to describe it. It sounds like how you would imagine. It's like clicking of small wooden objects together. And the way that, these fabrics, they move as he moves, it really feels like a wave, like waves running through these twigs. And I kind of like to imagine each twig as someone like Nick Cave, someone who feels discarded or overlooked. And when they all come together and create a crowd of objects, then, they can create something new. They have momentum. They make sound. They make noise. And, they create a whole new experience. So
it seems like that's such a very meta thing because you have a twig, you collect enough of them, you have a suit, you collect enough suits, you have an orchestra, really, of so many people. And it is really comparable, but I'm curious, okay, so he's done twigs. You mentioned some bells before. Is it always acoustic sounding things? Does it have to be a sound instrument, or is there some other kind of textures? Or
That's a good question. So I think on the most basic level, he is into this celebration of devalued materials. So like you were talking about, they've sort of evolved into something even more than where they started from. And so now he makes all kinds of sound suits, and he likes collecting usually things that are discarded, things that you might find at the thrift store. And he likes to elevate these things and create beautiful sculptures and works of art from unexpected places. So other than twigs, he uses things like objects from the thrift store, and he creates these really heavy, sometimes even 40-pound in weight, sound suits that, really depend on the material. And he also hires artisans to help him create them because they are really time consuming to make, and they require a lot of work and craftsmanship. And so, he is creating these, it's almost like, I imagine the way that a haute couture, workshop works. So he has all these apprentices who are creating these beautiful fabrics, and he makes them into these large dresses and large headdresses and things like that.
Yeah, that's another thing. Are these, just suits? Like the idea of a suit that we would consider a suit? I mean, pants and a jacket, or are they like totally nothing like right now I'm imagining a guy wearing a bunch of twigs on a nice like 3-button suit. Or are these like totally different than
suits? Like a spacesuit.
Oh, okay.
So they cover the whole body. These are great questions. And usually the head is created into these large sculptural forms that don't really look like a human. Maybe they create a more fantastical creature-like experience. I like to sort of compare them to, do you know like carnival culture? Yeah, so like these ideas of creating sort of different beings out of materials,
Okay. So he's really trying to transport the viewer or the, person observing them into a different world, kind of make them feel like something's happening that they've never witnessed or heard before.
Yeah, and everyone who's in the suit, it's almost like there's someone new when they put it on. They look kind of like monsters, maybe, something you might see in a children's book, or, where the wild things are, that sort of idea. And what's also interesting is even though they do feel like they're almost non-human, he created these suits to the scale of his own body. So they're not only elaborate and beautiful, they also are very personal to him because they're made for his body. And, he is thinking a lot about his relationship to his body and his artwork.
Well, it's interesting that he did everything fitting to his body, but at the same time, he can get all these different people to wear it. I'm sure they're very unique. And also, I'm really interested in the fact that he was able to kind of bring in all these ideas of, like twigs and, discarded items from thrift shops and put it all together to wear. And just the process of wearing it and putting it on, I wonder what he transforms into in his own mind. He's transforming into something else. There's a reason he puts these on, not just to connect with, discarded people like a twig, but also he creates, some of these. I'm looking at some of them now. And I just wonder what it feels like. Have you ever been a costume character? I'm curious if you've ever worn a full costume, maybe on Halloween or something like that.
Not like a head-to-toe costume like that.
I've done that before.
Put on some costumes.
You feel different, though, when you put it on. And I can't imagine what you feel like if you're wearing one of his suits.
Yeah, what does it feel like to put on a costume?
Just feel like you're a different person. Something, you can act differently. You're actually wearing the skin of something else. So I wonder what these people, these models or participants, feel like when they put it on. Wonder what he feels like.
Yeah, I think it's almost like taking a vacation from your own life for a moment and, being able to just creatively express yourself.
Well, do you think that is there a certain suit that you like the most out of this? 500 is so many. Is there something that really jumps out at you?
I think I like them together. I like how they interact with each other. And I like watching the people dance in them because they feel, so much like, they feel very exhilarating and freeing, I think.
Okay.
He, I think, is creating these from a really dark place personally. He talks about how they're almost like his second skin. Sometimes when we're really hurt, we want to put on a mask, put on a costume, and sort of hide ourselves from the world. And he talks about how, when we put these on, we don't have to show the world our identity based on the way that we look. Our race is, obscured. Our gender is obscured. Our class is obscured. You can just, be free to your movements and the sounds and the colors and the energy of these suits. And he also talks about how, it makes you hyper visible because you're, everyone's watching you. But also you're anonymous at the same time.
That is exactly how it is wearing one of those character suits. You're very visible. Many people are looking at you, but you have this anonymity that is really kind of empowering, actually. You almost feel like you can, just be yourself or not be yourself, but it doesn't matter because you're actually this other thing. Now, in his case, though, looking at some of these, I really do wonder about the kind of different inspirations. Some of them kind of furry, like different materials. And like you said before, he really is at heart like a textile fabric sculptor. These are really, really amazing. And if our listeners, they definitely should not only go look at the pictures, but probably some videos out there of them in motion and listening,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's really fun to see how they move in space and, how they react to the movements of the body. And I think, you've touched upon really good ideas there. And, apart from being able to put on a character, they're also kind of like armor. He talks a lot about armor and different cultures and rituals that like to put on these sorts of armors or have ritualistic celebrations with.
Oh, okay. So he's kind of like pulling, not just based on his own personal stuff, but he's able to also incorporate the different ideas of wearing these masks, wearing these armors from different cultures. He sounds like a very intelligent and well-rounded artist. But, in the end, what is the purpose, I guess, just to bring people together? Or is there some other greater reason why he's doing this?
Well, he does talk. So what's interesting about him is he's obviously very intelligent.
Yeah.
And he, I think, is really personally affected by a lot of some of the political, social things that were going around in his life. So he started his studies for graduate school during the AIDS epidemic, and he saw a lot of his friends succumb to the illness. And starting from there, and this need to, feel free from the sort of biases that people have on groups of people.
Yeah.
And with the Rodney King, and also he made a work about Trayvon Martin.
Oh, okay.
But when you look at the suits, they're not dark, and they don't necessarily directly talk about them. I think they're a lot more universal.
Okay.
Yeah, they, talk about just sort of I think this feeling and energy that he wants to give to the people around him. And I think that's because, he's not trying to teach anyone anything, or he's not trying to warn anything. He talks about art being diplomacy, and he says that he wants to use art as a change agent and give back to his community. He also talks about having a sense of urgency and feeling like things are not happening fast enough. But I think that's also why that he decides to bring art to smaller communities.
Okay.
So he is, making art in communities that he feels personally connected to. And he is bringing a lot of these beautiful works to people to understand and be a part of.
Well, it sounds like he's using art in the best way possible to be diplomatic, but also to give representation to people who might not get it and empower, various groups. So, man, I really didn't know who this guy was. Thank you so much for bringing him on and informing me about Nick Cave. It was great.
Yeah, I had a great time. Thanks for having me.
Well, we'll see you back next week.